I have the pleasure of connecting with Brad Williams. Brad Williams, over the last decade, has owned and operated three gym locations in Orange County and oversaw 40 plus independent personal trainers, each with their unique training styles. He built a loyal following and sought after client trainer community culture within each of his gym locations. Post pandemic, Brad had to focus more on online training, like many of us did, and had started his first fitness podcast called Over 40 Fitness Hacks. He wanted the show to revolve around his personal passion of helping the over 40 crowd fight the aging process while still having a social life. Brad, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Carol.
Before we dive into what is hacking, fitness hacking, biohacking, and a little bit into your podcast, I always love to get the personal story around people because I know most of us come to health, nutrition, fitness, personal training. Something drew us there, whether it was a family member, some type of personal experience. Did you have something that specifically drew you into the fitness industry?
Um, I kind of grew up in a household where, my dad was a medical doctor, mom was a nurse for a while. So kind of just grew up with that health and wellness, lifestyle and was always into sports. But mostly I just wanted to, as I grew up and then eventually went to college, I mostly just wanted to be an entrepreneur, just like my uncle. I knew I wanted to run my own business, just didn't know what to do. But looking at all my hobbies and everything, they're more sports related and into fitness and whatnot. So that's why not start there. So my brother and I opened up our first gym here in Orange County, in Huntington Beach, California, and that was about 13 years ago. So I got all my certifications as a trainer, and kind of looking back, might have been an easier time if I had worked at a couple places first rather than just going the brick and mortar route right off the bat. But you can, there's only one way to learn, dive in. And so, over the course of 13 years, I had about, got some investors, and we grew into three different gyms all across Orange County. And just, roller coaster ride of entrepreneurship, some the ups and downs. Met a lot of great people. Like I said in your intro, had over probably 60 different independent personal trainers running space from us. And then just with how tough competition was in California, doing business in California, and then COVID was kind of icing on the cake for the brick and mortar game. A lot of us had personal trainers that already kind of started dabbling in online training. I started my fitness podcast, Over 40 Fitness Hacks, and my investors and I slowly dwindled down just to one gym. So I still have one here in Huntington Beach. I only work there 2 days a week, and the rest of the time I do online coaching. And I'm just more interested in doing my podcasts and just the scalable, reachable factor of it. Going across the world, talking to different health and wellness people and different types of clients. It's just been very fulfilling.
As podcasting is amazing. I'm always telling people it's really one of my most favorite things to do in my business. I love working with clients. I love coaching. I love writing, but podcasting has really opened a whole new world for me.
Yeah, for me too. And I've learned a lot over the years, but now it's not just my little Orange County bubble. It's people across the world, and
Hmm.
everyone thinks differently and has their cool little things that they're doing in all parts of the world. So it's I love doing it. One, it's still a passion of mine, and then two, it's just you know great education. Like you can't learn this kind of stuff in school. Just like I say, jumping in the brick and mortar game, you can't learn business like you learn when you jump in and do it from school. I mean, it all helps, but you got to live life. You got to meet people, network. So this has been a great forum to do that.
Yes, I'm impressed that you jumped right into the brick and mortar and opened your gym because I did have a gym for a time and I had been personal training, working at another studio, teaching classes, teaching yoga, group fitness, and I still found it very challenging because you come up against some of the bigger gyms in town that maybe can offer more for less.
Yeah, yeah. Our thing was always we niched ourselves in kind of the semi-private sector, so we would get three to four clients share a trainer, they still pretty much get that personalized experience because it's not that hard to put everyone on their own program, versus doing the big group classes where everyone has to do the same thing. And that worked for a while, and then all of a sudden all these Orange Theories and big corporate franchise gyms came in with way cheaper rates, and they had the money to behind them to make their places look fancy with technology. So that was struggling a little bit. But kind of halfway through my career, I switched the focus from going after clients to I was getting pretty good rent, and there was a lot of trainers out there that needed a home, and there wasn't too much other gyms that would either allow them or they'd have to be employees. So I kind of switched the gears and just started marketing towards trainers, and that's how I, climbed up so many of them.
Oh, that was very smart that you were able to pivot in that way. And I think it's part of what you were talking about. You're getting an education when you dive right in. It's like we make the mistakes, we learn what works, learn what doesn't work, which is more important, and we can take that forward. I feel personal training was such a great place for me to start because that's where I learned about people. Because in one day, I'd see a 25-year-old nurse, and then I'd see a 78-year-old woman, and I had cancer survivors, people who'd had hip replacements, bodybuilders, tennis players.
Mm-hmm.
It was all across the map, but I would not trade that for anything. Did you find that to be true as well?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would have, if I could go back in time, would be, start like you did, work at a couple different gyms and focus more on my marketing. And, I would have built up great and then had a better time, opening my first place. But either way, the experiences and everyone I met, and the entrepreneurship of it all, like you can't beat that. So I loved the whole process of learning and meeting everyone. And as far as training clients, I've done the 16-year-olds all the way to the 80-year-olds. And just over time you learn that, okay, some, I wasn't more of an athletic trainer. I would build them up to a specific point and then refer them over to someone a bit more suited to them. So I kind of became more of the point person when people came in to fit them with the proper trainer, and that actually did better for my business than for me trying to grab the client for myself. Focusing more on the client and their needs, and they'll stay longer if they're fit with the right person. So that did really well for me as well.
Oh, that's so important. I love that because we can't be all things to all people. And that's how I learned too. I learned, okay, I don't want to really work with 16-year-olds. Not that I don't love 16-year-olds, but it just wasn't my thing. I preferred that midlife, so 40 to 60 age range, and then really just getting people started on their journey
Hmm.
was more my thing. So it's such a great opportunity to discover, what you are good at, what your expertise is at. And I noticed that when I watch trainers, they work with certain populations.
Yeah. And then my niche was the same thing, 35 to 55 was kind of my go-to. Just, a lot of that was available to us here in Orange County, but that's kind of who I more vibed with. I felt more passionate in helping them because, the aging process is just starting to kick in there at 35 and 40, and then it only gets worse. So, and that was kind of my reason for doing the fitness podcast a couple years back, because I finally turned 40. And oh my god, it is harder to lose weight, and you are moving less, and I do have a kid now and responsibilities more than I did in my 20s and 30s. So man, all my clients were right. Why was I pushing them so hard? So that was kind of the joke of starting the show. But I'm I've got that personal trainer mindset, the fitness background. I refuse to give into the aging process. So that's kind of that was the theme of my show and what I'm doing now.
I think it's great. I'm doing the same thing. I'm very much into that longevity and health span as we discussed on your podcast yesterday. So I'm right
Hmm.
with you. I know when I'm going to shift gears a little bit. You had a back injury led to surgery. I too had two different back injuries that were rather severe. I managed to dodge surgery. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I know it completely shifted my perspective. It was very humbling. And I looked back and thought, oh, I look back on how I had trained and taught classes prior, and realized, wow, what I put people through, because it was about being the hardest trainer and maybe there was some ego involved. Boy, after that back injury, I had all the empathy for people. Do you want to describe what happened and how that might have shifted your perspective?
Yeah, because just what exactly what you said is how I view life now, and same humbling experience. But going back in time, 5 years was when my accident happened. I'm the gym owner, I'm the accountant, the bookkeeper, the bathroom cleaner, the mover. I do everything, and moving some gym equipment was what finally got me. And just was going into one of my gyms, taking just a few things out, and there was a little eye bolt that we have screwed into the concrete, and we attach our battle ropes to it. And usually, if no one's using it, you put either the shed door comes down and hides them, or you put little orange cones to cover them. Well, I was just going in for two things, so I just I don't need to do that. As soon as I went in, grabbed a 40-pound rack to put plates on, was moving it to my truck, and I'd already forgotten that thing existed, hit it with my right foot, lunged out so violently, and I caught myself and held the rack. I don't know why. Just
Oh,
I pride myself on balance and all that, but well, this time it didn't really work out for me. But I remember just hearing a pop. I knew I did something. It was so violent, and it took until really the next morning when I woke up and my whole body was locked up, and I was millimeter walking. I had to get over to my chiropractor buddy, and I had to pace around the parking lot for 30 minutes before I could even get up the stairs. And then he saw me and knew it was big trouble, so he got it a little bit more motion in there. Went to him for a few months and actually got back. I rehabbed with my PT. Everything was looking good, so I slowly got back into the workout program. And then I slowly got back into playing ice hockey, which that probably wasn't a great idea at the time.
oh,
And what I didn't know is when I popped that my L5S1, it was herniated, so it was leaking that fluid the whole time. So over the course of 5-6 months, I finally felt my first pinch of sciatic pain, which I'm sure you've had your bouts of that as well. Um, but it just kept getting worse and worse. No amount of PT, chiro, acupuncture was helping. The pain level was getting all the way to level 10. Then I had to start jumping to fives. I was saying I was in level 15, level 20, level 25 pain,
hmm
all the way up to 50, where I was basically crying every day. And so at that time, I had already been talking to the surgeon, and he saw me and he's like, no, we got to take care of this. So did that, and then lasted about a year and a half, and I slowed everything down. Not enough, I guess. And it reherniated again. I guess it just happens once you have a damaged disc, because you're just
yes.
playing with fire at that point. Went through the whole process again, not as bad, but I decided it was getting worse. Physical therapy wasn't working. I did a second bout. And now, since then, we're talking about humbling experiences. I went through two of them and had to reshape my body, this many times already. And so I just did everything three times as slow than what the PT wanted me to do, what the surgeon wanted me to do. I took off a whole month and a couple weeks of work and just laid down. The only thing I would do would go walk, and just realize, you've got time. This cannot happen again. Slowly build your body back up. No more running. I just did walking. I think it was about 9 months before I even picked up a pair of 3-pound weights. And so I've just kind of kept that philosophy and more focused on, I'll talk about that with one of my hacks too, of just doing more like time under tension, or people call it slow motion training or negatives, and with just way lighter weight or body weight even. And I've gotten so much of that, strengthening my core, my glutes, my hips, that, I'm a year and a half out now from my second surgery, and I feel the best I've ever felt in my life with the least amount of effort. So it just tells you, quality over quantity. Slow down everything, use less weight. If you still want to do sports and all that, should probably be able to get back into that. I'm too scared to do it though. And I'm not getting paid millions of dollars to play ice hockey, so I pretty much sold all the stuff for that. But yeah, that's kind of my thing now, is just, we talked about it on my show, just longevity, vitality, feeling good. I cannot have another injury like this. Protect your body as best you can.
It's traumatic. I think if someone's not had a back injury, they can't really understand the degree of pain. When you were saying it was a 10, it was a 15, I can relate. I had that sciatica down the front of the leg because
Hmm.
my injury was L3, L4, L4, L5, but it was like no pain I'd ever had. And I wanted to go back and apologize to all the clients who would say to me, my sciatica. And I don't know why, but it sounded so
Yeah.
trivial. Sciatica, I don't think I even really understood what it was, but that nerve pain, nothing works on it.
Yeah. And even my clients back then, I felt the same way. Like, so I'm just like, oh, you need to stretch more, or do this, or work on your form more. And they just, okay, okay, kid, and they just shrug it off. And I know now why. Same thing. I can't expect anyone to know what we went through. People could say the same thing with any disease or injury out there. But when I meet a fellow person with a herniated or bulging disc going through the same problems, I just want to give them a hug because they know
Same.
exactly. We don't even have to say anything. We just to talk about your story, but we already know. You know
Yes. On the upside, though, I feel like these experiences make us better as coaches because now we do have the empathy.
exactly. Yeah, and besides all the research and everything we went with just a single point on our bodies. Yours was L3, L4, mine was L5, S1. I feel like I'm a master at that one particular joint now. But just everything now, I'm worried about my shoulders, my knees, my ankles, obviously your head. Just balance training and time under tension is so much more important to me than trying to deadlift a lot of weight or anything. And running, I'm pretty much stopped all running just because for me the G force of pounding on the pavement, and I didn't really like running and cardio that much anyways, but I now go rucking or walking with a weight vest or a backpack, just very small
Oh,
amount
I
of weight.
love that you bring that up.
Yeah.
My husband and I go rucking just about every weekend. It's been very cold here and it's windy today, so sometimes we ruck indoors on the treadmill, but I absolutely love it. And it's something that you would think initially it would hurt your back, but I'm finding it's actually helped my posture quite a bit.
Yeah, and I mean you don't need much too to make it miserable. As you make it as miserable as you want. As far as boosting the fitness level of it. So I mean, my weight vest is only 6 pounds. It's very form fitting, feels great, and walking. I walk at a brisk pace. Like I can
Mhm.
almost. I tell my wife I can walk faster than she can run because that's how fast I'm going. But the amount of G force of running versus just walking is just such a huge, uh, difference that the longevity of that is just so much better, and I feel good. I like it. I get to go outside. I got my tunes on, getting some sun, and so it's just like now become a daily routine.
Same. I like to just throw it on, even walking the dogs, just to get that little extra. And I love it for bone density for women. I always suggest that as an easy way to increase that or improve that bone density.
Yeah, exactly. Circuit training or weight training obviously has tremendous benefits for that, but walking and then putting a little bit of weight on there too is just great. But we need that over 40
We do 50, 60, and
and
above.
above.
So I want to shift gears a bit and talk about biohacking, what it is, or fitness hacking, and what are some of your favorite hacks?
Yeah, so fitness hacks. When I started, this is more of kind of like fitness tips, even though I kind of the play on words, a hack, and I do enjoy, diving deep into biohacking, which is how do we get the human body, every part of us, even the cellular level, to get to this the most extreme point we can. But for my show, I kind of more easy, toned down type things, more fitness tips than biohacking. But yeah, we talked about on my show. My one of my biggest ones I've discovered, with moving less, being over 40, slowing down, seeing some of the weight kind of pick up, was just adding in intermittent fasting. And I know you're a big proponent of that. And just I couldn't believe just the simple little thing of just crunching down your eating time window and fasting a little bit longer each day, every day. How much damage that could do with keeping me lean and having my weight loss down. It's just been amazing. And I talked briefly too. I know you don't like doing it, but I kind of dabbled more into the longer fasting, not all the time, and I kind of built my way up to it. But just seeing like I could see it on my blood work, the autophagy part of it, of your body cleaning itself, and my cholesterol levels in a 4 month period. I did a test, and just I did every other week, and just built my longer fast up to a, you know 12 to 24 to 36, and I eventually stopped at 48. That was enough. But just seeing my cholesterol levels drop in 4 months down 20%, my doctor couldn't even believe it. But I'm sure you could do over time the same thing with just simple intermittent fasting. But just in general, I feel great. I have more time to do stuff, not having to worry about breakfast and all that. And just over 40, that's why I created my show. You need to start adding little tips and tricks and hacks to help us stay at your aesthetically and as functionally fit as we can.
It's very freeing too. You hit on the time aspect of this. So being from the bodybuilding community, the coaches always put me on these little mini meals, 6 or 7 meals a day. Oh, you got
Yeah.
to eat every 2 hours. And I was running around the city with Tupperware, and I would stop in the middle of my workout and eat cold tilapia. And to not have to do that anymore, it's freed up so much time. Plus, I didn't realize what I was doing with my blood glucose levels and insulin levels, because a lot of times they would have me on a cup of rice in the off seasons. It was like a cup of rice every 2 hours. And when I went to break that cycle, it was so difficult in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I was never a breakfast person. I hated it, hated doing it. So it was an easy cut to just chop that off right there. And then my eating window is normally from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. With some cheating every now and then, but for the most part, just kind of trying 90% of the time has just done so much. And someone I met someone else on my podcast, I guess, that came on that was real into intermittent fasting, and they even gave me a cool tip on how certain spices can kind of spike your insulin a little bit. And I was taking a morning detox drink where I take apple cider vinegar, a little bit of cayenne pepper, cinnamon was the red flag, I guess, and black pepper, and can't remember what the other thing I put in there, turmeric. And she said more specifically, the cinnamon has been known to spike the insulin. So I was like, oh my goodness, it seemed like 0 calories, but there's certain other things that kind of bump you out of your fast. So I stopped doing that, and 2 weeks later, I'm like at new levels just from the little tweaks. So I'll be doing an episode on that on my show now.
Yeah, cinnamon, I did not know that because I'm always putting cinnamon in my coffee, and then when I break my fast, I put it in the shake. But something I have found, stevia, a lot of people are having stevia, and I know when I wore a continuous glucose monitor, I was a little surprised that my blood glucose would spike on stevia.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It shouldn't. There's 0 calories, but I guess just the trigger of tasting sweet, or I'm not sure even if salt will trigger it, because now salt, if I'm thinking about it now, triggers that savory taste in your mouth. That might actually spike your insulin. I don't know, but yeah, I'm finding out stevia. I took that out. I basically just moved my detox drink to right before I have my first meal at 2 now, and just something so simple as that, just tremendous benefits. So I'm loving fasting.
Have you found that you need electrolytes when you're fasting?
Um, I did, I know the whole for the longer fasting, especially. I think for the shorter, maybe you can kind of watch out and not have to take so much. The longer fasting you do, and your body will actually, when it goes that long, will start panicking and hold on to your potassium. So you actually have to watch how much potassium you're taking in, but you do need the other electrolytes. But that's my worry now is, does the sodium bump your insulin level? I don't know. But either way, on the longer fasts, you have to take the electrolytes. What about
I,
you on the intermittent? Do you take them or?
I do. I use the unflavored element when I'm in my fasting window. And then in my feeding window, I'll switch over to the orange salt because I really like the flavor.
Okay.
And when I went through the intermittent fasting training, I went through Cynthia Thurlow's training. I don't know if you're familiar with her work.
Mm-mm.
She is the author of IF45. So she has a certification program I went through. I wanted to learn more. And she said the salt was fine in, or the electrolytes were fine as long as it was unflavored and it
Unflavored.
wasn't sweetened with the stevia.
Okay. And you had at one point you said that glucose monitor, so you wouldn't see any spikes in blood sugar just from the unflavored electrolytes.
No,
Okay.
never.
Cool.
Interesting things spike it for me, and I guess this is a little individual, but coffee, I have to be careful. Too much coffee, even if it's black and there's nothing
Wow.
in it. Lack of sleep and stress. One day I had an extremely stressful, kind of surprising event happen that was very upsetting. And I looked down at my phone to see what the glucose monitor was registering, and it was like this this sharp spike up. So it's really an eye-opening experience to wear one of those.
Yeah, I gotta try out one of those. I know, you kind of have to worry about how hard you work out and kind of refrain from doing any hit type workouts just because your body's natural ability to create its own glucose, depending on, what stressor you're giving it to in the gym. So, on those days, I tend to keep everything really mild, more like, slow walking and simple exercises or physical therapy exercises for my back. But moving is important because in those fasted states, I want to supercharge my time. You're in a fat burning state. I want to use it, but you got to be careful not to, boost up your body's own, glucose creating system. So I've learned to do
That's
that.
true. That's true. And with women, we have to be so careful of the stress and the cortisol because we lose our resilience to stress as we age. And in particular, that perimenopausal 40 to 50 window, women have to be so very careful with that.
Yeah. Um, Another hack I wanted to throw to your audience, kind of staying with electrolytes, is you know your potassium levels. I had a guest on my show. He wrote a book about all this. Can't remember the book name. He's gonna beat me up for not remembering this, but basically he was talking about how, not just tracking your macros, your fats, carbs, and proteins, which is important, but your micros, and especially the electrolytes, so your magnesium, sodium, potassium, and then all your vitamins. And a cool website I found to help track this, and it's not something you need to do every day. And some people don't even need to track their macros daily. If it helps them, that's fine. But just do it for a day, just to see where you are. So a cool website is called eatthismuch.com, and it'll show you every micromineral imaginable for every type of food you can think of, and in raw form and in cooked form, because there are certain things that'll increase in potassium or decrease in other things once it's cooked. So that's very interesting. So, like, spinach and kale and collard greens are all high in potassium. They're even higher once you cook them. Versus onions, when you cook them, it loses some of its sulfur compounds. That's another micromineral. But just to play it safe, check with your doctor. But you can also Google what are the RDAs for all these things. How much should I be taking? That's a good place to start. Obviously, with your health and wellness professional as well. But make a chart. Just do it just for a typical day what you're eating. And the biggest thing with my guest Tim Kelly, who was on my show, told me that in our American diet, sodium. We all know sodium is so prominent in
Mhm.
all our processed foods, and even something you think is healthy is probably chock full of sodium. But how low our potassium is compared to what our RDA should be, and then there's a theory of, some people think it could be higher, and that's up to each individual. But sure enough, I did the chart, and I was lacking in some of the other minerals a little bit, but close enough. But potassium, next to nothing of where it should be. And sodium, I thought I was pretty low. It was too high. So making
Wow.
that switch with real foods, I'll try not to push supplements or anything. Real foods is better. And in the first, I think 3-4 days, I probably lost good 3-4 pounds of just water weight of
Wow.
making that switch between potassium and sodium, because sodium holds so much water inside the body, not in our cells, just floating around in our arteries and our skin. And potassium actually pulls what it needs into the cell and then shucks the rest off. So that was proof right there that my body had reversed it. And not only that, but I feel so much better during my workouts, and just looking at myself in the mirror, just seeing how hard the muscles look and tone versus the soft look from the sodium. So you can get an instant gratification right there just by checking.
That is so interesting. I never think about the sodium versus the potassium. And then you were saying the body tends to hold on to the potassium when we're fasting.
Yeah, so I learned that, and I think potassium, sodium. If you have too much sodium in your diet, we all know, okay, you could have high blood pressure, that kind of stuff. Potassium is a little more dangerous, where if you're not watching it or you're taking too much at a time, and it starts, it can helps conduct all the electrical systems in your body. It can start interfering with your heart, so you got to be very
Hmm.
careful with that, and use a professional. But I was taking maybe a little bit too much at one time with food, and I would start feeling like little heart flutters, and that was the reason, because this is kind of interfering with that signal. Um, but learning more and more about it from other people in the space, that your body will hold on to potassium in those longer states of fast, because it really needs it to run the body. It thinks you're in survival mode now. Um, and I guess magnesium and sodium and calcium, it's just normal. It'll let go of it. So if you don't put any more into your body, you'll start feeling the dehydration. You'll start getting upset stomach. So those, you have to take those electrolytes in. But potassium, you need to, you know, kind of tone down the longer you fast.
Our bodies are so smart and amazing with how they want to keep us safe and what they do. I had recently learned that having an excess of sodium, especially from ultra processed food, can ignite this survival mechanism or pathway where we start to turn glucose into fructose and then stored as fat. And the gentleman that I was listening to on this, he was talking about camels and how their fat is stored in the hump, or certain desert animals, the fat is stored in the tail. And the fat itself doesn't have water, but when it's broken down, the animal can get water from that body fat. And I just found that fascinating.
Wow. And that kind of plays into more of the why people are so interested in biohacking. Look at the animals can already do it and we can't. But yeah, we were talking about this on my show. Just what are we going to look back? People 300 years from now looking back on us and what they can get the human body to do. It's just there's so many limitless possibilities.
Yeah, we're really just now tapping into these things, and it's exciting to see the whole wellness health field just open up.
Yeah, and over everything we're talking about, I still like to push on the audience listening. Whatever you're trying, diet, or if you even tried potassium, sodium, checking that out. Listen to your body. That's the biggest thing. Your
Mhm.
body will tell you if it doesn't like something or if it's having issues with it, and then then you can also check with your professionals. But you know, for me too, on certain days of fasting, I'll feel, a little shortness of breath. Maybe I had
Mhm.
too much potassium, so I'm listening to my body. I'm like, oh, I haven't had any electrolytes. I haven't had any salt because I haven't been eating anything. And I'll just sprinkle a little bit of sea salt in some of my water, drink it, and within 10 minutes, took care of the problem. So just getting more finely tuned with what's going on, and how much inflammation is building up in your body, seeing what foods you're allergic to, that kind of thing. So that's been my focus for the last year and a half.
That's really good advice because I think, especially in our culture, we tend to ignore the signs that our body gives us. Like I'll see women push through fasting, perhaps when they're under a lot of physical stress or they're not sleeping. And I'll tell them, listen to your body. Maybe that's not the day to do a 16, 18-hour fast. Pull it back a little bit.
Yeah, and just from the last 13 years of being an entrepreneur and hustling and everything, like there is no time for sleep. You work, 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 work. You just get things done, and
Hmm.
a little easier to do when you're younger. Still, probably not the best idea, but now that I'm 42, I'm just like I can't go at that level anymore. And stress has so much negative effects on my body, and now I'm listening to it more, especially after all my back issues. And you think I'd have a high tolerance for pain for how horrible I got at one point on that, but once that was all washed away, I think I started feeling what was going on more than ever, and stress included. So I have to watch out for mental stress as well, not just physical.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Do you have any hacks for stress or how you personally manage it?
So for stress, besides just, I'd always get 6 or 7 hours of sleep, and I know that's real important. So I never really had problems with that, but a lot of my clients do. So that's kind of the big thing I push to check first is how's their sleep doing. But other than that, just finding something you enjoy and being outside. Like all of our jobs, even before podcasting, and now I'm kind of a gig desk worker now. But being in the brick and mortar gym space, I never left the gyms. I lived in those things 7 days a week,
Hmm.
never saw the sun. So just it's how important it is to get outside. So for me, it was, oh, I enjoy rucking and going out and have my vest on and listening to music and being outside. And every now and then I'll maybe go on a hiking trail or something like that. But some people like surfing, some people like bike riding, just something outside. Doesn't seem like a hack, but it needs to be said over and over and over again because just people aren't doing it.
They aren't, and it's so important for the circadian rhythms. I was listening to Huberman's podcast, which is excellent. Love it. I'm hooked on it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about the importance of getting outside and getting the light directly in your eyes, and then also going outside and looking at the sunset and how that can set you up for a good night's sleep. And I just found that fascinating.
Yeah. Meditation is kind of seeming more and more important to people. I haven't done much myself, but I am listening to other podcasts on how they do that, how to get in tune with your body, and it's very interesting. So I think I want to add that to the curriculum. Start dabbling in that, but I haven't done very much of that.
It's very effective. I do more of a prayer than a meditation, but basically the same thing. And I do find this very calming effect. You can just feel yourself starting to let go of whatever you were angsting about.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
very effective.
absolutely.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time, Brad, but before we wrap up, was there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I think I kind of touched on it a little bit, but my biggest thing I like to put out there is, just slow down everything you're doing. You know, simple, simple workouts you're doing, and trying to lift as heavy as you can. You can use lighter weight, take more time to do the exercise. Like I mentioned, time under tension, negative, slow motion training, whatever you want to call it. There's a million names for it, but start implementing that and just see how that works. Like a simple squat with, a 2/3 less weight of what you normally do, and taking 5 to 10 seconds going down, 5 to 10 seconds coming up, you won't be able to do more than 6 to 8 reps, and you'll be exhausted. And it's less weight, less injuries. More mind body connection on feeling the exercise versus just repping out as many you know reps you can on a certain exercise, and just be more mindful. So that's kind of the message I want to put out there is just feel your body, do what feels good and just slow down. Slowing down means less injuries, which means more vitality and, longer lasting benefits for your life.
That's excellent advice because most of my listeners are women who are over 45, 50, 60 years old. And most of us, when we reach midlife, we're a little beat up. I tell people my body's like this roadmap of injuries I've had over the years. So, yeah, there comes that point where you have to achieve progressive overload in a different way from simply throwing weight on the bar. And ultimately, I know I was taking my lifts through my back without even knowing I was doing it.
Yeah. Or, yeah. And I mean, I think for me, looking back, just deadlifts were probably the one for me.
Hmm.
Besides being a boy and wrestling and fighting all my youth, I'm sure that didn't help out either. But deadlifting, I was getting real into that and how heavy I can go with some of my you know buddies and personal trainers, and even with perfect form, over time it's just wear and tear on the body, and especially that one spot in the L5S1. So
Yeah, we pay the price in any kind of little weak area in the body. We pay the price on down the line for sure.
yeah.
Well, Brad, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed our conversation so much. can you tell the listeners how they can find your podcast, how they can reach you?
Yeah. My podcast, Over 40 Fitness Hacks, you can find on, whatever podcast player you're listening to, Spotify, iTunes. I know there's a million out there. And the best way to reach me is just my website, over40fitnesshacks.com. And that's 40, not spelled out, both for the show and the website. And then all my contact info is on there. So
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'll make sure this is all in the show notes, Brad. And thank you again for being on the show.
awesome. It's been a great time. Thank you so much, Carol.
And to our listeners, wherever you are in the world, we wish you every blessing. Bye for now.